close.
Close.
All right. Well, we'll wave to you, Terry. Pop in and say hi if you'd like. All right. Minutes of 6/12/2025. Can I just say, it seems like you were very busy.
Were you there? No.
No.
I wasn't there either.
All right, let's bring up the minutes.
minutes.
Second.
Oh, we can look at them.
Quick, yeah.
Is there any discussion?
That's fine, yeah, any
Yeah, don't we do the discussion?
comments
after?
or
Yes,
dissent? So we did a double minutes approved last time.
that was very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. We talked about how things are going with permitting. We talked a lot with Brandon Benedict this year to talk about the forest management plan. And what it would look like to pursue the second phase of Ethan Tapper's forest management plan. And noted that it's not really on the table for next year. So, there wasn't necessarily a sense of urgency to keep with Ethan's initial schedule. And then we talked about budget ideas. And we funding for a couple of things, so. Any comments?
I can zoom in, I can't see that, but I can zoom in here. I should get glasses.
I had a question. I know this maybe comes after we approve it. But it says here that that John was discussing coordinating with the logging activity with the trail planning repair cost, and I guess I'm wondering what the trail planning calendar is, if that schedule is out, so that we.
Well, I think that is an excellent thing to talk about, and I have a few minutes scheduled for a follow-up on that conversation a little bit later, so. I think, I love that comment, and yeah, maybe we'll just table that for a little later, if that's all right with you.
We talk later. Earlier, I told him I was gonna ask that question.
Okay. All right,
So
we have a motion and a second. You just need to.
let's vote. All right, so, what's the wording for how I ask it?
All in favor?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes of 6/12, and any
This is
Opposed?
the
cons, any opposed?
First 5-0 vote we've had.
Unless you
Oh, I
Let's do
abstained,
it.
because I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to vote?
We learned you can vote even
Oh.
if you weren't here, you just have to.
Yeah, but since we have a quorum, well, since three of us can vote yes and two you can stay and it still passes, then you don't need to.
Okay.
But if it's like it's legal. If you're in a situation where you're.
But ostensibly, you should be familiar with
Right.
the minutes and what was approved.
Yeah.
Maybe have even watched the recording, which would have been impossible because we didn't record last time.
Oh, really?
Oops. I mean, in a way you're
We did so
trusting.
many other things.
That's okay, we
Yeah.
used to not record them at all.
Yeah, right.
Right, like
It's a Zoom thing,
pre-COVID,
yeah.
we just took minutes and people could read them.
I guess in a way you're trusting the people who were there, who are saying, yes, that's an accurate reflection, and you're saying. I'm voting yes, because I know the two people who were there are trustworthy people. Anyways, the three of us can vote yes, and you two can abstain, and it will still pass, so.
Sure.
That's probably easier.
That is done.
3-0-2.
Sorry, it is not.
Yeah,
That's
we'll have to,
alright.
we'll have to go to
Still exciting,
something
still adds
else.
up to 5. Okay. All right. It is proved.
All right, so we have 2 minutes. Get caught up with our outdoor family center update, unless it's coming from you right now.
I can do that for us, yeah. So summer operations are well underway, summer camp, we're in week 4 of 9 and it's going really smoothly. All of our 6 to 7 and 8 to 10 camp programs are sold out for the season, with extensive wait lists, and we do still have a little bit of availability in our 8 to 14 explorers and 11 to 14 mountain bike program. Like friends. The race series continues to grow each week, despite insurance changes and increased costs this year, so that's super exciting. We have almost 200 people on our trail running start list and have surpassed our mountain bike count from last season, so that's really exciting. As far as memberships go, this is the time of year where things tend to slow down for annual memberships, and we're seeing that trend as well. But we're also noticing pretty low day membership purchases on site. A lot of pedestrian activity and birders have slowed down because migrations have changed. But I think that all of the rain has just caused folks to do other things or go elsewhere. That's shown with our rentals as well. That's also pretty slow. Our clinics and lessons have also been impacted by the weather with extensive rescheduling and postponing and things like that. So we're finding a lot of people are signing up. Like if we're having a Saturday clinic, they're signing up on Friday based off of weather and things like that. Weekly offerings like our Monday, Thursday rides and Ladies Fridays are chugging along with steady low counts, but we're not seeing a lot of growth. And cycling club is also doing pretty
I think that's fine.
great. So that's kind of a summary of just our generic summer operations. As far as an update on our two big projects for our building and our trails. Building, we're still working with our architects and engineers. We've got a floor plan pretty nailed down that we're really excited about. And we are now discussing what materials the building will be built out of and how that impacts fire safety. So if it's wood or sprinkler systems, if it's metal, things like that. And whether or not we need fire lanes and where those may go. And roof angles, solar panels, so all these kind of really refined details of how that building will function, which is really exciting, starting to see some like 3D models of what it might look like when you walk through the doors and how operations can flow through the building. So very excited about that. The big unknown for the building right now is septic. So we're working out where on the property the best location for that septic is, what type of septic system it will be, and also trying to partner with the McCulloughs because they have some septic needs of their own and seeing if we can work together to find a mutual path forward there. I might pass the baton to John or Dave to talk about trails because we just recently had a walk with some wetland specialists and I was not able to be a part of that walk. But there was a lot of information shared at that walk about what is possible. And I think that one of you can do that better justice than I.
Sure. Welcome, John. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So to bring everybody up to speed on our permitting process and progress, wetlands is one of the steps in the way to get an Act 250 permit, and really one of the more complex and difficult ones to do. So we've been working with Bowman Consulting, and we hired them to do our delineation work and to help with the planning process. That some of that work has also been used for the building planning to make sure that we're outside of wetland buffers with the building, and then certainly the septic is part of their help with us too. But in terms of the trails themselves, they have gone out and identified all the wetland areas and all of our vernal pools as part of this process. And then where they overlay with the trails, we're working with them to also catalog how those trails were built. So because if materials have already been brought in, we are able to bring in more materials. If no materials have been brought in, it's more of a rustic trail, then we have to get permits in order to do any work in those areas. The permit costs are not dramatic just for the wetlands, the state wetlands program. But if we cross the threshold of 5,000 square feet, we kick into Army Corps of Engineers permitting costs, and that is $7 a square foot. And at 30,000 square feet, that kicks in, and then everything after that also is charged at $7 a square feet. A square foot. And the single largest piece of trail that we had proposed to do in wetlands, and this is just this is the only new one that we're proposing, is the access from the oval onto the south side to replace the McCullough's Road. And then we proposed it to accommodate the mowing and brush hogging operations that need to happen on that side. So we originally estimated it 15 feet. We might be able to shrink that down to 12 feet, but that still puts that area alone as causing the Army Corps of Engineers permitting costs to kick in. And so everything we do after that on the other side of the road would also be extremely costly. If we don't do that as we had described, then the costs on the other side of the road will unlikely to cross the 5,000 square foot threshold. So our wetlands coordinator suggested that we separate recreation and agricultural uses and access. And my point to her was we were trying to take care of both uses with one trail, and she suggested that we that we have to look at other opportunities and other things that we have. The only other opportunity to replace the road is to stay on the road that the McCulloughs have. And I said I would happy to talk to them and ask if there was a way to buy an easement, even because the cost of what that might be could be far less than the cost of the Army Corps of Engineers permit. So I had a discussion yesterday with Jim about that, and there are he did not shut the door on us. And so there is David is going to talk to him next and see where we are with that. The other piece of this that kind of hit me afterwards is that piece of land is not ours, and I don't know how that affects the permitting. So we have to ask that question and clarify what the impacts are with combining two pieces of property, and whether there is any way to split those things so that we are not impacted by the Army Corps of Engineers permitting for that. So those are the really big things about it. The more minutia is that the state really wants us to use boardwalk in a lot of places that we don't currently have boardwalk, and the challenges for us to using boardwalk and putting boardwalk in is likely to be increased costs, reduced accessibility, reduced usability, and less able to be safely groomed and used in the wintertime. So all of these things are challenges, and so we have to weigh those and decide whether it's worth getting a permit to bring in material and use those materials as opposed to putting in boardwalks. In specific, we're talking about balsams and larger areas of Three Rivers. And while balsams we only groom for fat bike and snowshoe access, and the groomer for that is about 3 feet wide. So I'm sorry. One other key detail to this is the boardwalks cannot be any wider than 5 feet. So two-way traffic with bikes or adaptive users is going to be really hard. We are allowed to do bump outs without permits. So there are ways that we might be able to mitigate that, but with the 3 foot wide groomer that we have, a 5 foot wide boardwalk would be minimum, because we don't want to just slide off the edge. A 4 foot wide really only gives you 6 inches on either side, and with snow cover, that would be hard to stay in the middle of that. So most of the other places where we are in wetlands are existing trails with fill in them, so those are much easier to work with, and we can continue to bring fill in and raise the trail and dry it out better. David, did I miss anything?
No, I think that, yeah, that's everything. I was present with John and Andy to sit in on the visit with wetlands, which was great to get to see and participate in those conversations. And I think the biggest question right now is access. Access for recreation. We do have a potential solution in terms of the John, what's the name of the trail that's farther down Governor Chittenden Road?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned sheep and blackberry too. So from
Sheep
the wedding field, um, paralleling the pond to the east, we do have a trail already, and then that crosses the wetland. But there's an existing bridge there, and we could use that as our recreational access. The challenge there is that we would very likely lose the sledding hill because the distance required to get out to the sledding hill would essentially triple or quadruple, and we would be putting um, barefoot traffic on groomed ski trails, which we are reluctant to do for many reasons. And if we were to put people out onto the groomed ski network with a long walk ahead of them to the sledding hill, we feel like people would be much more likely to wander and start using different parts of Goose Hill for sledding, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, but will certainly impact our grooming and the quality of the skiing on that side, which is our primary ski side.
Yeah, thanks for explaining all that. So yeah, that was one of my big takeaways too, is that situation is tough because while that access point can work for some recreationists, it's going to be pretty challenging for other recreationists to have to take a mile, half mile or whatever it ends up detour to get to some of those areas, especially small children or folks who can't walk as far, including some of the birders who still able to get out there but can't necessarily complete a big long loop. And other folks who use who want to use the south side but can't necessarily or aren't necessarily up to making a big trip every single time. So
I guess even Nordic skiers would have to like clomp down the road with their skis and like in their boots. It would be very silly.
yeah,
The only caveat to that is they could ski like night trail to Cabin Run and then cross the road
Yeah.
there, but that's a lot longer even just to do that and much more challenging. So it without an easy sort of direct way in, these other two options are our best ways. So that is the back and forth on that one, on how to figure this out.
great. Any questions on that? Cool.
Did you finish the rest of your report? I missed the beginning of it. So did we talk about camps and races and all that stuff too?
Yes, you joined at the best time.
Perfect.
I mean, I guess John, I've asked this before, but I think I'm dense and I always am slow. Like it's a long process. But like the wetlands step, is the wetland step mostly done? And now it's hard to answer all these questions and take their input and figure out, and then like are we looking end of the summer still to submit the permit? And I know we're trying to get the municipal rate. Like I always just like, hey, we're at like exit number, you just drove across the whole country, like, hey, exit number 250 is we're at exit 3 and we have to get to.
Yeah,
So what exit are we at? What
It's-
exit do we have to get to?
it's such a good question, Hans. I feel like this project is like there's 12 chickens and 12 eggs, and it's just like what comes first to complete, what, Act 250 depends on the wetlands, but what goes through with the trails depends on so many other factors.
Yeah.
So a lot of credit to Amanda and John and all the Catamount folks who've been really front loading the work on this. But yeah, I don't know, John, if you have any particular comments on that. in terms of where?
I think, Tina's directives are clear, and we know where we will have to get permits if we need to, and or if we decide to. Sorry, and then the advocacy work with the McCulloughs to figure out their side of this, I think is high priority right now, so that we can then. I think we have to figure out the oval to applesauce access first, because everything else sort of flows from what happens there, in terms of what we choose to do and what we choose to get permits for, or what we leave alone. So I believe that we can iron that out relatively quickly, and then still submit this permit within a month or so, and have Act 250 quickly follow it, because we don't have to wait. Once we when we're working on this wetlands one, we can submit an Act 251 and say this is part of everything is ongoing here. We need the reviews of all this, but they don't need to see the permit to start reviewing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'd say,
sorry, just to finish that thought, I'm still enthusiastic that we will be able to start building this fall. But I'm also a realist and believe that it might very well be next spring.
The only thing I was going to add is that it kind of depends on what what we can live with in terms of access. And the way DEC wetlands review is set up is they come out and they say this would be really difficult to permit, and this is how you could accomplish most of your objectives without permitting. Like, this is how you could avoid wetlands, use boardwalk, which is an allowed use. You could do this, and this to avoid even having to tackle permitting because it's such a hassle. So basically, the question after this review is, well, can we follow those various directives and be satisfied with, losing this trail connection here, losing, or a big access change, if and when the McCullough driveway is no longer accessible. Like, are those okay, or do we have an argument that it's fundamental enough to the operation that we really need to go after the permit? And to go after a permit, you have to do an alternatives analysis, and you have to really make a case to wetlands that what we're interested in hoping to do is worth the trade-off, and then you have to pay. So that's kind of all the factors there. It's the reviews are always really designed to push you in the direction of avoiding impacts to begin with, and therefore not needing permitting. And so that's kind of the bigger questions to be kind of still chewed on, is just, what would it mean for the operations of Catamount if the only access between the two sides for recreationists was sheep blackberry?
Or what would it mean for patrons if it was less accessible? It seems like there's an argument to be made about accessibility and like equity.
I mean, our arguments about accessibility were met with, you need permits, or you need to spend more to get these permits. So, and just to tease this out a little further, we were told that the access from the oval up to applesauce, that we could start riding it in right now, as long as we did nothing to build the trail. If we just started mowing it and riding it, they were fine with that. And I was like, but we're just going to create an erosion problem if we do that. And Tina was like, well, you don't need a permit to do that. So there's some real back and forth that I'm not feeling satisfied with it. But this is where we are, and I don't know that we can change the permitting process or the rules just because they don't make sense.
Yeah.
But that is literally what we're trying to work with, is being told that as long as you don't build the trail properly, you can use it.
So applesauce is through a wetlands, is that the point?
The connector too.
No.
So When the property was conserved, there was an easement
Mhm.
that was part of that deal that connects from Governor Chittenden to Applesauce. Is my understanding, and that's the easement that was basically determined to be.
Do you remember where the dome
Entirely
used to be?
No. But I remember the talk of the other easement beside, and that, okay, and that's a wetland, that also triggers a potential wetlands permit if you build properly to build up that trail. Is that that's what you're saying?
Well, our original goal with building a wide road essentially on the piece that connects to Applesauce is was to accommodate the agricultural uses that are part of the easement and what the town has to fulfill with the land trust.
In addition to minimizing the necessity of using the McCullough's driveway, should that eventually not be available
Sorry about
again.
that. I don't.
Correct. My feeling is that that is a not just a likelihood, but a reality that we have to face. And so I don't know
That's
whether
why the original easement was negotiated, because they were like, oh, long term, we don't want people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So one thing I did talk to Jim about was that if we could get an easement just for the agricultural uses, which would then they would only have 3 or 4 trips a year out that road as opposed to having people every day, and that the other 2 options we could build to a lower narrower and less impactful. But if we're gonna build that new trail, we need to have a permit for that work, regardless of how we do it, unless we do it as I just described as a drainage problem, which we're not excited about doing. And then the sheep and blackberry side, we there's some existing infrastructure that could be upgraded or could be repaired without triggering the permit. But if we do any kind of drainage work or bringing in material, we do end up having to get a permit in some of those areas. It's a much shorter and narrower crossing though there than it is at the other side of the property. And just to be clear, there's no way on to the south side without crossing a wetland, regardless of where we cross. So the narrowest place is Sheep and Blackberry.
I'm just wondering, I just shared a grant opportunity. I'm wondering if there might be, like, if you took the, like, this is preserving access angle, if there might be grants that would like pay for the permitting.
Certainly, we're willing to entertain that and see if we can get help with that. If we do that though, then we are likely to incur those costs on the other side of the road. So
Yeah,
there will be a secondary problem, but obviously, much less overall to pay for.
Great. Yeah, thank you, John, for all that and great questions and plenty more to think about and talk about. So we can, we'll of course have another update on the next meeting, but I think this is a big ongoing important thing to be discussing, and so we'll have a running item at the next meetings, just updates about how this is shaping up, and if anyone wants to be part of those conversations in the interim, definitely feel free to reach out to Danielle or I, and if you have ideas or want to explore something, we can convene a small conversation, below quorum, do some brainstorming or connect you with John or Amanda to continue the conversation.
So I feel like as the Parks and Recreation Committee representative, I feel like you need to plug for the easiest way for the most amount of people
Yeah.
to access the south side.
yeah,
Whatever way we can, and
Well,
put the money towards, like, I can't, and also, I can't imagine training new people to go the other way
know,
and not
that's-
take the driveway.
I'm with you. I think
So that
that's,
feels like that's gonna be a big headache if what we can do to, if we can try to
Yeah.
get that driveway for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John mentioned the,
Yeah.
conversation that he had with Jim, and I'm
Yeah.
planning to follow up with Jim, but it's certainly a stone to turn to lay it all out there. And I think John's kind of already
Yeah.
done this to some extent
Sure.
and just say, and here's the situation we're in. Um, there's a lot of different components, and you're a private landowner, but this is what our hope might be, and we're willing to find some resources to make this happen if there is a pathway forward. So that's definitely a conversation that's worth happening, as you say. I think that has to be one of the options that we explore. But I think my understanding from John is that it's been made pretty clear that access for recreationists is not something that is currently desired for the future of that from the family. So
How far south? No. How far west does the wetlands go? Like how close to the blue house that they own is it?
So the blue house is they're what they mow up to is basically where the buffer starts.
Got it.
And Tina actually suggested, oh, you have to move into the tree line, and I was like, that's not where the easement is. So we don't have a choice to move into the tree line, and the tree line is really meant to define the other property and
Yeah.
the backyard of the blue house. So we can't go that way. And the wetland, so that we're in the wetland buffer there, and then it quickly goes into wetland as you go further down the field. And that wetland goes all the way up to the top of the field too, and beyond.
So I'm just making a note for myself. I can make a map for the next time that we're all
The
together. That
delineation.
we'll show the approximate wetland locations.
I mean, we have the map from Bowman, which we're happy to share.
Yeah,
Especially
right.
as we update that with our plans. I think that's a fully appropriate thing for everybody to see. So
Okay, that's a great point, John.
Because we have something to share, we will.
Great.
Awesome. And we have Bob here online. It's like we're
Great. Okay. Yeah. Is everybody all right to move on?
Yeah.
We have a running item on our list to check in about proposed town events. There is currently no proposed town events, unless there's anything that anyone has come across anyone's radar. So the only thing I'll say about that is just a helpful note. We had a canceled event for weather. It was one of the bird walks, which is, of course, that happens. But one thing that we discovered, just for procedure for next time, is that since it was posted on the website, there were still some people who showed up that didn't know that the event was canceled. So just good protocol moving forward. Note to self is when we have event cancellations, we just need to be in better communication and pass that around. Of course, if it's a last minute inclement weather thing, and there is no communication, some event might need to be canceled anyways, and that's just how it goes. But if there is kind of advance notice for an event cancellation, we'll do the best we can to pass that information around so we can Catamount can post on the website or that kind of thing. All right, so welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. What
Thank
a
you so much for coming.
yeah, so I see all you guys. What an advanced Zoom system you guys have. For you. It's kind of nice. Okay. Well, where do you want to begin?
I can give a quick preface, and so
Okay.
there has been for, I guess, going back at least a year or two, there's been $3,000 that was presented to be approved from the stewardship fund for the purpose of putting together an overarching invasive species management plan for Catamount. And that funding was approved by the select board as the process for withdrawing funds from the Catamount Stewardship Fund. And then it's been a to-do list item for a little while. And so we're finally getting going on that. And so we're very happy to have Bob here. And I think in addition to just an opportunity for folks to meet Bob virtually, if you haven't had the chance to do that yet, This is an opportunity for us to kind of clarify what we hope to get out of this management plan, knowing that an invasive species management plan cannot tell you how to get rid of every invasive species. It's just there's too many, right? And so for a plan to be effective, we have to have kind of clear goals about what we're hoping to achieve and hoping to see. And in order to make that happen, I think it's great to kind of start off with this dialogue. And a couple questions that have already come up that I know folks are hoping to get answered is, with this plan is one, how can the town leverage volunteer power? We have the Boy Scouts, we have active members of the community who are really passionate about this and regularly volunteer to remove invasive species. So what species, what locations will it be effective to use volunteer power to try to make progress, and when might it not be appropriate? When is it going to be more appropriate to really use a larger scale tool, chemical applications and herbicides? And then what is kind of our overarching strategy in terms of are there priority areas that we want to work? Are there priority species that we're concerned about that are going to jump to a higher level in terms of our concern and our efforts than other species? So those are some of the questions that have come up that I think we're hoping to be answered by the plan. And Bob and I went out to Catamount I think 2 weeks back to take a look, just an initial walk around some of the spaces that I know Bob's been involved in treating in the past in conjunction with work that Ethan Tapper had organized, and just to look at some of the forest blocks out there and start brainstorming about this. So that's kind of our goal today, is really just to start off a little informally, but have a bit of a Q&A and back and forth, so that we can start to clarify the goals and hopes with this plan. And then, Bob, do you want to just take a moment to kind of, I don't know,
Sure.
introduce yourself and where you're coming from in terms of this work?
Sure. So my name is Bob Hyams, and I have a business. I have Habitat Restoration Solutions, under which I do a bunch of, kind of traditional invasive plant control work. We also have another business named Riverscape Ecology, which is more focused on river corridor restoration. And I've been doing invasive plant control for 15 years commercially. And yes, and Dave pointed out that my connection to Catamount is through Ethan Tapper, who I know you guys all know, and he was very involved in lots of stuff going on at Catamount. Yeah, so I think, in money, I understand money was set aside. And I guess, I'd like to put it out there, kind of big picture, and just say, hey, I'm a resource for you guys. And we can talk about, all kinds of things, methods, sort of what makes sense for different types of and different levels of infestation. I think, picking up on what Dave said about, that you guys have a range of resources, in terms of volunteers and with different levels of capacity. I think that would be sort of an interesting thing to, sort of define on paper. What does that look like? I know there's a crew of people who are experienced doing foliar herbicide. We know that, getting people, if they're open to it, involved doing cut stump herbicide. That aspect of herbicide is not difficult. It doesn't mean everybody wants to do it. Yeah, so it'd be kind of an interesting exercise just put on paper. What are the capacities that we can apply to the non-native invasive plant situation at Catamount?
I mean, I think there's from my point of view, being a committee member, there's this sense of how much should we be doing that we're not losing the fight, knowing that we'll never win the fight? Like it'll just be like like so. And I vaguely remember like, oh, well, we have $5,000 a year to spend on this. I forget what some dollar was, and the question was, well, is that enough to not like have invasives just take over anyway? So I think we're looking to get like a little bit calibrated on like a prescription, like go to the doctor. What's the prescription for our forest to not have it just year after year be losing the fight? And I guess I don't know if that's asked if I'm thinking about that in the right way, but that was my feeling of what we were struggling with as a committee.
Okay.
So you were asking like
So
what we could do, and we're sort of asking you like, well, what should we do?
yeah, yeah. Um, sure. And you know, and one end of the spectrum is, you know, I mean, you could contract with a commercial um, business to, you know, to basically, um, you know, work to control invasives throughout the whole property. I think it'd be incredibly expensive, but you know, that kind of work does happen. So, you know, sort of, yeah, it's just kind of a chicken or egg. Well, what needs to be done? Well, what are the resources that we can apply to it? Um, you know, probably just as a starting point, it's yes, you know, so I think that's a good point. You know, is there something new in the woods that's, you know, where you know, you know that maybe we could classify as early detection, rapid response, and yes, we should get on that. Potentially, you know, just over the years, um, and I don't know how much experience you guys all have with invasive plants, but I'm guessing you could identify buckthorn and honeysuckle, and those are big ones, and they're kind of ubiquitous. I know there's also a bunch of Japanese barberry, um, and you know, just in my time,
But, but
it,
we also, can I just jump in and say that we have,
yeah.
do you see Terry Marin is also online? Who was a former member of this committee who also knows a lot about the invasive area.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Um, maybe in a minute we can let Terry pop in and have her say.
Sure.
Oh yeah, why don't you finish your point and then we'll get Terry in maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, you know, from my perspective, you know, bittersweet is one that, you know, over the past 10 years, it's really working its way into the woods, and boy, once it gets established, it's really tough. So I always have an eye out for bittersweet. But yeah, Terry, jump in, please.
So yes, so I met you when you were walking out with David,
Yep.
so a
Yep.
couple of weeks ago. So I worked a lot with Ethan, and out there, especially on the north side of the property where he did the logging, and
Mhm.
he also had yeah, I think you were there for that, Bob. The Brontosaurus was out there. He got some funding from the Habitat Stamp, I think, at one point.
Mhm.
He was
Yeah.
really trying to beat back the buckthorn and honeysuckle. And I think, were you the one that went out and sprayed?
Yeah, so and it wasn't actually a brontosaurus. It would have been nice if it was a brontosaurus
Oh,
because there's a lot of downed, there's a lot of big downed things in that field that made it tough to navigate. But yes, we had a crew out there afterwards to get on top of the buckthorn resprouts.
so one thing I remember, Ethan was very passionate about getting rid of that Japanese barberry. And
Hmm.
he went out there with a backpack sprayer several times and just went out in the area where prior to the logging, and he just hit all the barberry that he could find. And on my way out from doing poison parsnip the other a couple of weeks ago, we ran
Hmm.
into Jim, and of course Jim has the mother of all those plants that they used to be a hedge around his house.
Hmm.
He's promised to. He said it has 1 foot in the grave already, so that'll be a good
Okay.
start for that. and it's on the south side too, the Japanese barberry. Uh, we, we have one person right now who is certified, licensed to apply herb, and he's not comfortable with spraying. But he said he
Okay.
would definitely do cut stump. And that's particularly good when it comes to having him on site when the scouts come. And
Yep.
I'm hoping they're going to come. And there's a couple of, volunteers, local volunteers that will come, but it's tough. Local volunteers are hard to get. I'm experiencing that up in North Hero, trying to get some help with different things. So I think we're really going to have to really kind of rely mostly on the scouts and a professional.
Okay. All right. And what will the scouts do?
So
What's
the
their
scouts
capacity?
are great. They come with 4 or 5 adults and about 15 to 20 scouts. And so the adults use the chainsaw. We mark the buckthorn and honeysuckle ahead of time with tape. The adults go through and cut the invasives, and then kids, they cut them up. The kids drag it and stack it, and then you have a volunteer, which we usually can get enough volunteers to do the cut stump. And as
Okay.
long as Chapin is on site or someone who's certified,
Right. Yep.
so you can have a whole crew of buckthorn blaster folks.
Yep. Okay. All right. So you guys have that capacity. That's great. I was just saying, just because you brought it up, and so Japanese barberry, and yes, I think Ethan dedicated an entire chapter in his
Yeah.
book to barberry. So barberry, as you know, I mean, it's no fun to walk through, but I'll just kind of out on a tangent right now. It's actually it's great to spray because it really responds. So one of the challenges with herbicide, and foliar herbicide, plants, they have sort of different rates of response. As a barberry really responds well. Honeysuckle is pretty good. There's 2 kinds of buckthorn we deal with. There's glossy buckthorn and there's common buckthorn. And, a lot of times, with big plants, we're able to, do the cut stump, and that's great. Everything, they both respond well to the cut stump. But, when we look at, when we look at a heavy infestation, we look at it in terms of, what's the seed source? And the seed source are the big mature plants, typically things that we would use cut stump to control. And then we have a seed, and then we have a seedling layer, which can be pretty difficult to deal with. And we have a seed bank. And so, when we do it commercially, we have what our basic MO is: we go in and we control the seed source. And in doing so, not only are you getting rid of the seeds, but you're kind of opening up, you're clearing out the understory, and you get more light penetrating, and that ends up stimulating the seed bank, which we want to do because we'd like to get some of those buckthorn and honeysuckle seeds to actually germinate. And then we will manage the seedling layer for a year, maybe even 2 years. And when I say manage it, what we do is we'll come in and we'll just cut it back. We use brush cutters, and which is basically a weed whacker with a metal blade on it. Or what we'll do is we'll just let it grow for a couple of years, and hopefully it's that seed bank is being depleted, because we don't want to have to keep coming back and spraying herbicide year in and year out. And the seedling layer is the most difficult thing to control using herbicide. So, we want to get as much of this, if we could stimulate the seed bank before we come in there and use the foliar spray on the seedling layer, we think that works best. So yeah, so I mean we don't have too many, there aren't too many tricks to doing this work. We have cut stump and we have foliar, and depending on the scale, and we also have hand pulling. We get a bunch of volunteers, a bunch of scouts out there, and the timing is right. A lot of times those seedlings can just come up. Um,
To
it's without too much.
hang them upside down in a tree.
Yep, hang them upside down in a tree, and yeah, it looks like some scene out of Blair Witch Project or something when we're all done. But
The seedlings or the
okay.
scouts?
John, I know that you got your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Sure. Just two comments from the visitor perspective. One is poison parsnip, and many thanks, Terry, for all your work and keeping that in check. But that is the primary thing that people are worried about when they come out as an invasive. Interacting with that is no fun for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to, you hadn't mentioned that in your initial comments, and that's the one that really, affects people visiting. I'm not in any way suggesting that it's higher priority overall, but that is the thing that we try to avoid the most, and it is often in places where there is traffic. So that's one challenge, and then the other is I think people might want to know where we spray and when we spray.
Yep.
Because we have foragers who come out and folks who wander and just to to be able to inform them of that, I think would be really helpful, and we're happy to do the map to like produce the map to share with everyone. But if we know the areas that you are working in with the sprayers and stuff, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. We should absolutely do that, and plus we put up signs. We have pretty good signs that we put up, for spraying in an area with trails. Regarding parsnip, it's a non-native invasive plant, and yes, so it's certainly warrants being part of the discussion. It's kind of, I mean, it's different from the forest ecology. Once again, it can be. It's not easy to control, and I'm sure everyone realizes that. But there are, um, basically, I mean, the best way to address it is probably, realizing that. I don't know how familiar people are with the plant, but it's referred to as an obligate biennial. And in the first year, it forms a rosette, which is just a sort of a low, it's kind of a low plant. The typical leaves coming off. Then the second year, it sends up the flowering stalk, which flowers and then produces the seeds, and that's one we always see. You really want, you kind of want to get to it when it's a rosette, and so that can be done. If anyone's digging it, obviously they know how time consuming and challenging that can be. It can also be sprayed. Not saying that that's what we should do, but yeah, and you want to get it and if you could time it right, it tends to green up early and stay green later, and that's kind of the time when you can kind of hit it with a foliar spray as a rosette in kind of the shoulder seasons. Hard to find. I mean, like if you went out there looking for rosettes, you're just going to have a really hard time finding them right now.
I kind of imagine in the invasive management plan, that's where we could go to that plan and it would tell us what invasives are out there, where they are on the property, and how they should be dealt with.
But also, I think there's even another element, which is like that Bob is getting at, which is like there are some that we would want to tackle for ecological reasons, and some that we would want to tackle for like human health and
Recreational.
well-being reasons. And like potentially as a committee, we have to figure out objectives. Like John brought up parsnips and I'm like, yeah, that's the number one thing, is there's so many kids out there, right? But somebody else might be like, oh, but from an ecological perspective.
Right, because I think we originally started talking about this too, because the forest management plan after the logging, we're like, well,
Yeah.
all these invasives are gonna
Yeah.
pop up now, so we need a plan to now deal with the
Yeah.
invasives.
So one thing that I think is worth discussing briefly in all this, when Bob and I were walking, we were talking about kind of two different strategies that could potentially be brought to bear, and it could even be some combination of them. But one is kind of a hotspot strategy of, okay, we know that there are these high traffic areas or aesthetically important areas. Those often tend to be areas that are pretty infested with invasive species.
Yeah, it's always where there's been a lot of people.
And like that's where we want to target. But the other strategy that can be effective or on more of an ecological scale is to actually sort of do the opposite, which is work from the parts of the forest that are in really good ecological integrity and have less of an infestation, and to sort of work towards the areas where you already have a lot of invasives. They're going to continue reproducing, they're going to continue coming up at the seed bank, to sort of protect the parts of the forest that are in good health. And I think that's kind of getting back to Hans's question of like, how do you kind of keep things from getting worse? I think that kind of strategy is the kind of thing that can, help in the long term. Understanding which part of the forests are already in good shape, and we want to keep that way, versus which parts are, we still want to do some work there, but we recognize that that's going to be ongoing work that, regardless of our efforts, will probably require continual attention over time.
But both of those assume an ecological priority over like human health, right? Like,
Well, not necessarily.
if we were like, there's definitely gonna be kids in this area because they always use this field and there's a lot of poison parsnip, then we wouldn't say overlooked areas or, do you know what I mean? Like if I think as a committee, we have to talk about priorities. Not necessarily areas, but like, what do we care about? Do we care about preserving human health and well-being? Do we care about preserving ecological integrity? Is it both? Is one more important than the other? Right, cause like. I don't know, if there's,
Well, they're coming at it from a concept of scarcity, right? I mean, who says we can't do both?
no, yeah, we might be able to do both.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm curious if we can do some targeted brush hogging in certain areas to just sort of manage perhaps along the trails. Because you can mow, say right around July 4th, you can take the parsnip out with some targeted brush hogging and do that annually, and then the seeds don't have a chance to spread. And then you can have the Boy Scouts in the woods kind of doing what you were saying and sort of move out towards the trails and.
And they're targeting different things there.
Right.
At different
Yeah.
times of the year.
Yeah.
So we need a,
So I
So
must
we
say,
have a budget for somebody to come in and do the brush hogging. If we could just say, now we're looking towards
that's-
along the trails.
Sorry.
Yeah,
so I just want to mention,
that's a big bang for
so
the buck.
we have been doing that. So Jim McCullough has been mowing that at the base of Goose Hill for Catamount. And then I was going in with, and surprisingly enough, poison parsnip, which is probably the most dangerous invasive to deal with. I can get people to volunteer. I don't know what it is, but we've been doing it.
yeah,
I don't know. In 3 years, we've been doing this, and I actually can see progress in decreasing the amount of poison parsnip. And, Jim did it for, I don't know, John, 3, 4, 5 years mowing like that. And it seemed to help some, but Jim said this year he was ready to kind of like give it up. He can see it's getting better in the area that he did. And then there's the other area that's along the pond, and really the rest of it over in the wedding field, there was a bunch of it, but the rest of the south end area of the fields, it's very sporadic. It's just spread around, and I think some of it is probably the haying machine are spreading it, and maybe brush hog usually happens in the fall, so it may be mowing the haying. But I think that's the one invasive that I actually feel it's not everywhere, whereas like the buckthorn and the honeysuckle are everywhere. The other thing, the Japanese barberry, Kim, you were talking about the health issues.
Yeah,
Ethan always talked about how ticks love to be
yeah,
in that Japanese barberry.
yeah.
So it's really important to get rid of.
The yeah, and Terry, and good for you. I mean, but I think the idea with parsnip, it just, I mean, I think it just takes persistence because
Yeah.
it's not, you know, mowing is challenging because, you know, the plants are not all on the same schedule,
Right.
which is a challenge.
They take
And you
time.
think you're getting most of it, but then they just have this ability to send up auxiliary stalks and whatever. And you think, oh, I just mowed it. Then you come back, you know, 6 weeks later and you see a bunch of seed. I don't know. And I will, and full disclosure, I don't spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
I mean, as a business, I mean, I've volunteered, you know, to remove parsnip, but I've actually never done it professionally. So,
So we use,
um,
we have the parsnip predator shovel,
yep,
which
yep,
really,
I got a couple of those. Yeah, yeah,
and it
yep,
just really, it makes it easier than with a shovel. And I remember Jim, I showed him one and he's like, he's an old farm boy and he looked at that and he said to himself, he said, short handle. He says, I'm not going to use that thing. And
yeah.
so when
No,
I
no,
ran it,
I mean,
it's amazing.
it, it's a great innovation. I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of simple what they did, and
Yeah.
but boy, it makes all the difference. So
Yeah.
yes, no, agree. But I can't offer. I don't think I could offer any more than Terry can in
And
terms of
I'm
control.
perfectly happy with continuing on every spring. And just today, when I came back from the bobolink monitoring, I saw like 5 or 6 that we missed. It's like,
Yeah.
damn. So next week when I do the bobolinks, I'll go out with the shovel and just go hit those
There's
five.
something very satisfying about
Yeah.
tackling a section and then,
Yeah.
maintaining it and seeing
Yeah.
it not come back,
No,
so.
this is great, and this is exactly the kind of dialogue that I think is we hope to generate here is understanding, okay, there's a priority, it's a priority that is challenging to control on a commercial level, like there's no silver bullet for it. So it actually might be a really good application of persistent volunteer labor. Like that's there's some great synergy in terms of our understanding here. So um, we definitely can take a little more time for this. I just wanted to note that that we're going over a lot of time on the agenda, but that's totally okay. I think we should continue the conversation. But I also want to note that today's conversation is really more about sort of bringing up these questions and identifying these priorities than it is about resolving or answering all of them. So I think this is
And I
really
agree with that,
generative.
but I also think we can't just keep admiring the problem either. I mean, like Terry's doing the work and we just keep talking about the fact that we should be doing the work. And so I think I would really like to see us have some kind of a volunteer, effort, this fall.
Mhm.
They're already, so there's $3,000 set aside from the stewardship fund for Bob to drop a plan, but there's also $3,000 sitting that's already been approved to hire someone to
Right,
go out and do these invasives. So, once Bob gets a plan set, I know Ethan just kind of threw out the name Trout Lily Forestry. But it sounds like, Bob, you have a crew too, and there's other folks. And the other one thing I just want to throw out there was I was very happy to hear when Tony D'Amato was here a few months ago, that he said that they will be monitoring that logging area where the trees were planted and that they will be doing weeding. So they will be
yes.
keeping on top with the students. So I was really happy to hear that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good to know because obviously that would be a high priority area, one that's getting a lot of light and um, yeah, and that's I'll just throw that out there too. It's kind of interesting because one of the things that we want to do for forest ecology is, we have this concept of an even age forest, which is a forest that grows up from a fallow field, and you end up with a very tight canopy because all the trees are the same age. And really, and it just creates the perfect environment for non-native invasive plants because they because native plants do not get understory plants just don't get enough sun in those even age forests. But the non-native invasive plants tend to leaf out early and keep leaves longer, so they have a so they can photosynthesize in that scenario, and they're really kind of operating with very little competition. So one of the things we do is we actually will go through woods and we'll try and open up and change the light regime, and that's always an area when we do that where we have to really focus our invasive plant control efforts. So anyhow, I'll shut up now.
Amanda, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the kind of opportunity I see here for collaboration with education and promotion. Our summer camp kids are on site for 9 weeks and we talk about invasive forest pests and invasive plants. And I would love to maybe see Terry and Bob come to our staff training or give talks to our coaches so that they can share this knowledge with our campers. And if we have days where you're volunteering on site and camp is in session, I would love for them to be able to maybe shadow or participate.
Or pull things up.
If we can have different volunteer days that are already happening on Catamount's calendar, I think there's a disconnect with the community of who do we go to if we want to help, right? Where do we get this information? And I would love to see that education and collaboration built into this plan.
And are you guys seeing more ticks? Do you know?
We have a handful hold off of campers each summer, but
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen an
Increase.
increase in my time there.
What's our timeline for the management plan in relation to Jean's question about starting action as well?
Well, I mean, as Bob's alluded to, the timing for treating different species is different. Like now is the time for parsnip. You don't really do it in the fall.
Right.
Which is why, Terry's been out there with volunteers the last couple of weeks, and we'll be going out again next week to do a little bit more. But there's nothing that's preventing us from, getting started other than the fact that, as Hans pointed out at the beginning of this, we don't want to throw money at a problem without understanding how that investment is, fitting into a larger strategy. If we send somebody out there to control invasives in a couple of areas, and we haven't really thought about how those areas fit into the whole, then we're stuck with this question of like, are we really applying these resources in a way that is going to be sustainable for the long term? So that's the sort of argument against like rushing into anything. But there's absolutely nothing that's stopping us from putting together some volunteer days, getting people out there and doing some, manual control in these hotspot priority areas in the meantime. And I think, even without the long-term plan in place, even while, still in development, for example, we could still get started this fall and put some things together. And I think, yeah, it's good to have some
Wherever you pick, you
you.
can't do the work and then leave it for 5 years.
Yes.
You have to do the
Yeah,
work and come back the second year and
Yeah.
come back the third year. Yeah.
Does it make sense for us to set aside a meeting where we as a committee prioritize, like, here's what we care about in the plan? Because I hear you saying I'm coming from a scarcity. And also, there's no way we can do it all.
Mhm.
So that's just the nature of invasive.
I just don't want to get into a contentious. It's like, well, you care about that one little field with the parsnip, but I
Yeah.
really care about this big part of the field with the view where my friends walk, So
I hear you.
I think we wanted to hear from the expert before we figured out our priorities too.
I'm wondering if it helps Bob write a plan to know what the priorities are, right? Like if someone came to me and said, write a management plan for my forest, I'd be like, well, a forest can be many things to many people. What do you want yours to be? And then I would write like 2 different plans or 5 different plans for 5 different answers.
So
I mean,
Yeah,
Bob,
and it's
that's
and bear in mind it's I mean, that's a big area, and there's really a lot of different there's different plant communities, different, a lot of different topographical features, and you could. I mean, some of the areas with the most intact plant communities are also some of the ones that people will never see
Right.
unless they want to climb down in some steep bank. So it is. So it really it's a challenge. I mean, and it's a challenge I'll admit it's a challenge for me to wrap my head around it because I could divide it up into a bunch of different management units and come up with a 5-year plan for each management unit. But I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to do that just as an exercise, and just something to put them or just something to put on the bookshelf.
Right.
It needs to really jive with what you guys think you can take on. Not just volunteers, but maybe you'll want to think about whether that becomes some kind of budget item.
I think
Ongoing budget item.
Yeah, Ethan suggested the select board asked this committee a few years ago, what kind of money are you talking about? And they asked Ethan to give them a number. And so he thought about it and he said, okay, how about $5,000 every year for the next 10 years? So $50,000. And he put that price tag on it and said, this is what to really kind of get a handle on the invasive on this large 400-acre parcel. That's what you should be spending every year, $5,000. So that kind of gave an idea.
And that goal
All right.
is to like attack everything.
Right. And I think he was thinking about tying it to the forest management plan. So here we're in year 3, I think, of the 10-year thing. So it would be like a 7, so it would correspond with the forestry management plan. So.
And potentially the revenue that is made from the logging.
Yeah,
Was that part of his idea did he have an idea for the revenue?
Right, $20,000 was generated from the logging operation, and then there's another logging operation coming up in 2-3 years. But also grants. Ethan was very good at finding money from.
Yeah, that's probably in a different different political age.
This was money from the stamp, the habitat stamp. So he actually was able to get some money, and that's a Vermont. So he was looking towards Vermont. USDA, actually, he got some money from there. So those were the sources of revenue that he was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we had a management plan like us, that's what I forgot how you just said it, Bob, but that's what I was thinking. I need a map. I need to know in this area what plants are there, and then we could maybe talk about prioritizing the plants that we want to take care of, like these new ones, maybe those are higher priority. And then we can talk about the areas that we want to prioritize as a matrix, and kind of decide. But I mean, I don't think I would necessarily start from, we don't have the money. That's all. That was my point.
Because
I don't think you're talking $1 million, so you're talking a number that, over a couple of years could probably be worked out. That's all.
Great. Okay, so this is like I said, fantastic dialogue. There's some unresolved questions, but that's part of what today was all about. It's just getting everything on the table so we understand what the questions are, what the hopes are, and what we need to kind of drill down on. And there's a lot of things that have been thrown out that could occupy a lot of time, mapping where everything is, what are the species. But I think some of the concepts that have emerged in terms of these priorities, in terms of a desire for better inventory and understanding from the community, and some of these basic priorities that exist in terms of like, yes, we want to help the ecology, but we also, this idea of human health with the parsnip is also front and center. Some great synergies potentially with volunteers, not just from the community, but also from camps. So there's a lot to think about here, and Bob and I will be following up to talk more about this, and we'll keep this moving. So yeah, thanks for that.
Not to complicate it further, But
Go ahead.
a thing we haven't talked about, I don't think, are invasive insects. Do we treat for EAV currently a couple black ash in cap?
We are currently treating, I think they're white ash. Terry knows about the location of the grove. I've seen a hand-drawn map before, but we are planning to go out there to visit them at some point. I would say that this plan, at least from my understanding, is really about invasive terrestrial plants.
Okay.
And EAV is sort of a separate conversation, but definitely one that's worth having.
Yeah.
But I
Also
think
maybe hemlock woolly adulted, I don't know if it's.
perhaps, yeah, but I think that's sort of a separate item in terms of like the plan that we're asking Bob to put together for us. Yeah. I don't know,
So
Bob, do you have any
there's-
last comment on that?
Yeah, I think it is separate. I think it's and Dave, it'd be good to see. So I didn't know that there's an existing forest management plan. That would be good for me to see. I'd love to read that. But yeah, no, I think I don't have special knowledge of EAB. We just know it's here. It's threatening all the trees, and yeah, and sounds like some legacy trees have been identified and protected, and that's great.
So there's ArborJet is a company that has a piece of an equipment, and they I think they also have the chemical that the herbicide or whatever it is, insecticide.
Mhm.
And it sounds as if they are committed to continuing to treat this this grove of ashes, the white
Mhm.
ash, up off the Night Loop Trail, for as long as those trees are living. So I
Yeah.
think they're going to be taken care of.
Great.
Yeah,
Great,
we're just 11.
Woohoo.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to first of all thank you, Bob, for your time and for coming to meet everyone tonight. And
Yeah, you
we'll be in
got it.
touch. I'll send you all those documents, the forest management plans, and yeah, we'll keep the conversation going. And then I also have some ideas in terms of following up with this group in terms of I think it'd be good to elicit a little bit of independent feedback as well on priorities, and I can collect all that information into a document. So I will follow up on that as well. But I want to reserve these last 10 minutes for the
Thank you, Bob.
forestry.
Okay.
follow-up. So,
Thank
All right.
you.
See you
All right.
guys.
see you, Bob. All right, so there's a couple of smaller things which we might not get to for today, but one thing I did want to just save 10 minutes for is just following up on our conversation with Brandon from last week and what people's kind of thoughts and reflections were from that conversation in terms of this the second half of Ethan's forest management plan. Are people feeling like there is an urgency to follow through with that? Are people feeling like it's something that can be put on the back burner with everything else that's going on? What were people's kinds of response to meeting with Brandon last week?
I thought I heard him say he can't do it this summer. If we want to
Yeah.
pay more money, we can have somebody else do it, but
Yeah.
there's no real urgency, so we should put it off till next summer, and that's kind of where I said, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I also think coordinating it with any invasive work is a good idea.
Yeah.
And with trail tools.
We have the trails, so we're gonna
Yeah.
coordinate
Yeah,
more
everything.
coordination.
I mean, invasives do love disturbance, so truly, that's like,
Yeah,
we should be doing that always.
Right.
Like, anytime we disturb something, we should be like.
yes.
And Danielle had a question, John, I don't know if you heard it early on, which David deferred till now, was to add comment to what was in the notes from last time. It says, Mr. Atkinson discussed the need to coordinate any logging activity with ongoing trail planning to reduce trail repair costs and avoid unnecessary. I don't know if that was
Right,
exactly
yeah.
your question, but just to elaborate on that.
I think my perpetual question is, what's the timeline on this? So is there a timeline on the trail work so that we could know, I think we had like 5 years or more in the,
15.
right, up to 20 years?
10.
Or where would the logging fit in?
I think regardless of when we end up doing the trail work up there, if we can coordinate the trail work that we're planning to do with where he cuts, the better off we'll be going forward. I mean, there may be new growth in there, but it certainly won't be 25, 50-year-old, 75-year-old trees that we would need to then cut. So it would be much easier to do that work once they've come through, and if they're following either the corridors we're hoping for or the new lookout area, then I think we're really getting the most out of that log.
And was there, and I don't know if I had misunderstood or understood correctly, like the idea of where they'd actually drive the make the logging roads, like if that ends up being where the trail is, then the ground's disturbed already. Then it's easier to put a trail in there, or I don't know, run over the existing trail to rip it up and really fix it. I don't know, how does that fit in, John? Do we want the logging machine going on where we think a trail reroute might be, or I didn't know if I understood that right.
I think that's ideal. The having impacts in a place where we're going to go have more impacts is a positive thing, I think, and especially the process of building trail often does involve some level of tree clearing. Not that we would need to be clearing as much as the logger would by any means, but if we are putting in new trail, having that disturbed already is much more helpful than trying to go in raw. And then the view point where we're hoping to replace the lookout. There's a fair amount of clearing that would have to happen there, and if we're on the hook to cut those down and remove them, that's a whole other game than having this part of a logging project where it's meant to be taken out. And then a final note: if we're planning to use existing trails that we could want to continue to use, then yes, we should try to mitigate the impacts of the log removal in those areas too.
So that makes a lot of sense. I just want to make sure one thing I'm hearing is that it wouldn't, in order to coordinate effectively with the trail redesign and trail master plan, it wouldn't necessarily have to be that forestry and building the trails are happening concurrently or like immediately after it.
That seems really hard anyway.
Right, but simply that the forest management is working with this advanced knowledge of what that master plan is, so that to the best that can be done, the disturbances are aligned in those areas. Is that right, John, what you're saying?
Yes, and to further clarify that, there are a couple spots where Ethan put roads that we are hoping to reroute some trails. So even with this previous project, it did happen to co-locate in a couple spots. So even without planning, that one happened. But with planning, I think we could be better off with it.
Is it accurate to say that also it would be the most advantageous if the logging happened before the trail work? Like,
oh yeah, yeah. There's
just making sure that that's also in the minutes or on the record.
Yeah, we
essentially.
Sorry, just to the impacts to the existing trails, we can't predate those, but certainly anything new, we wouldn't want to build and finish something and then have them come through.
Yeah.
Is there already a location that's chosen for the logging, the next step? And does it overlap with the new lookout plan? Is that what you were saying?
I believe it does, and it certainly does with our longest reroute that we have planned. So those are the two biggest pieces for sure.
I'm trying to wrap my head around like how it would work to have like those plans overlaid, like the logging and the trails and the invasives all like mapped on top of each other
calendar for the next 10 years.
Well, like in my head, I'm imagining GIS layers, like how do we find the synergies? But I don't functionally know what that looks like as a committee. Like maybe it's bringing all three people in at one time, but that seems like a unwieldy conversation.
I still think it would be great for a trail map and the different numbers of the floor, like.
The
even-
units, the management units?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or there were like different logging zones of 1 through 25 or
Yeah.
something and have those together.
like on a GIS, like a
Yeah,
GIS.
Yeah.
it's on
With
the
the
town
trails
website,
too.
it's linked to it.
We like,
I don't know that the trails are on there, but
Yeah.
it does show like, here's area number.
I know the trail's better
One-
now.
it's like 1 through
Team,
20.
get out there.
So my question for this committee is, as we kind of close out these last few minutes, is the general consensus right now that, you know, delaying this 1 year, that means we're planning for this next summer. That's when trees will be marked, when logging road routes will be determined, when a contractor is signed up and all of that. And then executing this in the late summer / fall of 2027. Or does it feel like in order to achieve these objectives of aligning to the best degree that we can, does it feel like we need more time to prepare?
Like
Given-
wait till 28, you're
Yeah,
saying, you're
given
suggesting.
everything else that is, because there's a lot that's happening at Catamount right now. This is a big time for Catamount. There's lots of planning, review, building going up, hopefully, all of that kind of stuff. So my question is, do people feel like we can reasonably go with Brandon's initial recommendation of like, okay, yeah, just do it next year or start things next year? Or does it feel like, you know, in order to achieve all these objectives that have been thrown out, we really need more time to plan, and we should be talking about maybe 2 years out?
I still feel like we're still trying to figure out the management plan for the logging that already happened. So to take on another logging that we have more, making room for more invasives to come in. Like I still wanna wrap up the invasive management plan for the previous logging. When are we gonna get that done first? Where I'm at.
I think I'm with you, like, I'm willing to wait. Also because of what I said before, that like management plans are a reflection of people's values, right? Like if a different forester wrote the same management plan, it might not come out exactly the same, and so like. They don't have to be, they're not hard and fast documents right? So like. If we have something come up, I think that we do have things coming up, we can be flexible, and also maybe there's an opportunity to like. Try to get a Rubenstein perennial intern, or like all the forestry students have to do internships, and like have somebody. Have a forestry student try to like. Do some sort of aggregating of like multiple goals into one timeline, and I don't know if that's possible, it's a big ask, but. I think I'm with you, like, let's wait and do the stuff that we have. Outstanding, and then take on the next project.
Well, just to contrary view would be. I'm a pessimist, given that. I love the building, I'm all about the building, it's not a problem, but raising the money and putting the building up next year, I think is a reach. So if we decide to wait for that reason, and then it happens the next summer, now we're gonna put the part off for another year. So, I mean, if we don't have to make a decision today, I would kind of prefer to keep planning on next summer and then. Change our minds when we get to signing contracts or something.
The building for us is going to be easier than the trail projects, because we're going to be directly involved with the trail projects and leading them, and where the building, that's going to be sort of done for us. And I really believe that we'll still be raising money at least by then. So I wouldn't put it on that so much, but certainly the time impact while we're working on trails will be there. Just to say that there's still large impacts to our time with that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with, like, if we're trying to balance outdoor family centers' ability to manage the property, I'm okay with that, but I wouldn't put it off because this committee can't figure out its invasive species plan.
Let's get our plan done.
Monty, you wanna take the last word?
Well, yeah, I guess I was gonna ask John to give his word, like my sense from Outdoor Family Center and the board is just like. The Act 250, the
Yeah,
wetlands,
there's a
the
lot going on,
building,
yeah.
like we've got the Borac grant, we wanna go get another grant. I feel better pushing it at least a year. Like I did the open-ended of when we're gonna get the Act 250, the trail, everything approved, like it's just a lot of work.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden we gotta be sending John out and team walking with the forestry, planning the details. It feels like having an extra year would be helpful to get those aligned. Yeah, and if we get students who,
So what I'd
What
like to
about, what
do,
about,
because it's.
can we finish Drew's,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
and then,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of agree with Hans there, but it's, I don't know, important to coordinate all these things with what's going on
With the
with
trust.
the family center and make sure that we're doing things in a coordinated fashion. So I have a strong opinion myself. I think we just need to make sure that we're all on the same page and doing things in synchronicity with each
Yeah.
other.
So I do wanna
Not pile
wrap
on.
things up because it's 7:04, but I hear a bit of a soft consensus, but what I'd like to do is just to have everybody think about this, and then maybe we can have like a vote maybe, or a roll call on, maybe where everyone's at.
What I would
next time we
prefer
meet.
is that the Outdoor Family Center decides if they would like this committee to not do the logging for another year. Because that's what the decision for me is, whether or not the Outdoor Family Center can handle everything they
we
got on
can
their plate.
come, we
Well, and also
have him
like,
come back next time with that.
it
Yeah.
might be a
Yeah,
moot
right, yeah,
point,
I'm not
right,
asking
Fred?
that.
John,
Like,
could you
we
shake his
should-
head, yes or no?
Is it,
Yeah.
do we even need to, like, we're not gonna pay for a consultant forester to do it, right?
To do
no,
what?
that's
No,
a whole
we're not-
other
we're
agenda,
not
whole
gonna go
nother.
right.
Yeah, so like it's, yeah.
So, okay, so be thinking about this.
Yeah.
And thank you all for your input. This is a lot of discussion today. I know we didn't resolve a bunch of things, but these were some important conversations to have, and it gives a bunch of ideas, I think, to each person who's kind of involved in pushing something a little farther to next steps.
When is the
Oh,
potential plan for the
sure.
building, though?
I
To
mean,
add to my timeline. Was there a potential
I
plan
mean,
to be able to
do you
place
have
everything
an
in a
extra
date?
couple $1 million?
Yeah, so you gotta
That'll
buy it.
accelerate.
Figure it out.
So we're
That'll
building, but you were
accelerate.
building it this fall? No.
No,
Thanks.
There's still a couple questions to really be answered before we can launch into major fundraising, and that includes the ownership of the building. So, and that's something that we're still working with the town to iron out.
So you're in the, we need to find fundraising phase.
We're raising.
We're not even
First,
ready to
yeah.
find
there's not even an
fundraising.
ownership model or
Yeah.
agreement with town.
But
major.
just a reminder, the building is not the thing that
Right.
needs to dovetail with
Yes.
it.
Right, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
like, I think we're thinking about like, like, do we want to log 1 year from now or 2 years from now, and should we try to push it to dovetail it with other things that we know are happening that are not the building?
Yes.
Right,
Like,
that's our,
yeah.
like,
the trail.
trails and invasives,
And staff capacity to
yes.
be involved.
Okay, to be continued. Thank you, everyone. Danielle, you want to close this out?
When's our next meeting?
Uh,
I like that at the end.
August. August 14th, the second Thursday of August. And put it on your calendar. Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
do we have a motion to adjourn? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Anyone else stay longer? I do, I have more questions.
I will say that, like, I don't know how often the other committees meet, but Conservation Commission meets twice a month, and I feel like this committee has like more stuff than they do. Not that I'm advocating, I'm not advocating.
Well,
this.
I was also
All right,
gonna bring
good
up
night,
at some
everyone.
point that